what we're doing is we're doing a part 2 on Will Hamilton, and we're going to be talking to him. It seems like we need a little static, so I hope everything is going well on the other end of this show. But you are listening, I'll repeat again, Dave Emmons Show, and I got Will Hamilton on from Australia. We did episode 1, and which is part 1, and now we're going to complete part 2 because Will's had so much to talk about, and there is a lot to talk about if we get involved in a lot of the underground things that's going on that we don't know about, and there's a lot of things we don't know about history that's not really the real history that we know of. So, what I'm going to we're gonna let Will talk, but he's got a degree, and he went into postgraduate studies, and he worked with a scientist, and we talked about that on the last show. He's actually an organic farmer, and he's going to expand that for long, and that's what his dreams and wishes are, that he does that. So I'm not sure that kind of a business. And yeah, I'm getting a lot of static, so I'm hearing it through here. Will, I don't know what's going on.
That's good.
Will Hamilton, Australia, buddy, you want to say something to everybody when you start off?
Yeah, I'd love to. I've come across a very enjoyable pastime or business, or call it what you like, but it seems to me that our food's been contaminated and deliberately contaminated for a long time. So I've come up with the idea of buying a nice parcel of land, it's about 2,000 acres in the country, where there's a very nice clean river running through it. And I've located 8 very, very positive, enthusiastic organic farmers who want to come there and set up this farm so it works smoothly as an organic farm. And then we're going to introduce people who've had struggles financially, especially families, and bring them onto the farm and give them dwellings and show them how to run the farm organically so that they can grow their own food. And we'll have an organic chef there, or vegan chef, to help prepare this lovely food so it's tasty and it's healthy. And I think once we do one of these, this is going to grow all around Australia, because this is what the government should be doing, but I think we've got to show them how to do it.
There you go. And get some people on your side, and I guess you got to get a few scientists together and talk to the government and try to get in their good ear. I know you guys in Australia are going through the changes like every country in the world is. Europe is going through a lot of different things now, and of course here in the U.S., we have border trouble and lawlessness, in which we need to correct, and that's happening all over the world. But it seems like we're getting a lot of attention with the lawlessness, and we hope. And what we're going to talk about is ETs and that type of thing. And they want peace, they want consciousness, and that's what we all want. We want to do what the Bible tells us to do, is to love and forgive and quit fighting. This war in Ukraine and Russia really bothers me. I hate to see, since I'm a combat veteran, and I wrote the book Senseless Wars and Conflicts, and I wrote that from my heart, being a Vietnam veteran, but it is all senseless. We're fighting for nothing, and it's actually the poor people are doing the fighting, and the people at the top of the food chain, they're getting rich from wars. They get rich from wars. Yeah, the elites, and what we talked about. We talked about in part 1 of this show. Yeah.
The mother of the Rothschild family said that if my sons didn't want wars, there wouldn't be any, but they're financing both sides of these wars and they're making a lot of money.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we just have to come to a conclusion, all of us, I guess, low income, middle income people, we have to come to a conclusion that we do have a voice and we need to speak it. We need to change. We need to change things politically around the world, because these elites and the powerful are taking us down a road that's only going to enslave us even more. And we talked about it in part 1. Let's get into the wing makers, and I think they're talking about these creatures, the wing makers, are tall, very tall, and they're actually translucent. You can actually kind of see through them. So what does that mean? Will, does that mean that they're angelic types, or what?
Well, some people say so, but I guess it means they're more ethereal, so it's not all just physicalness about them. They're a little bit physical, but they're very ethereal, and so that's their spiritual nature being more dominant. They say that when they built our DNA, they built into our DNA a type of like a 10 commandments. So we know intrinsically how to behave in a good way, in a positive way, to help our friends and take care of ourselves. So
Right.
when we learn to honour that, we don't get distracted by all the other things that we should be doing in life, but we listen to ourselves. We know how to be successful in life as individuals.
Right. Yeah, it's something that we all have to work at, and I know that we talk about the health issues in part one, that we have scientific technology that can actually rid us of a lot of diseases and things that kill us. But there's some people at the very top who don't want us to have that just yet because of population control. It's been openly said. I mean, you got Gates who talks about it openly, that the population has to come down by 50%, or we're not going to be able to
90%.
90%, really 90. Yeah, I heard 50. Maybe that's just getting their foot in the door, but yeah, it's they said the planet can't sustain. We got 7 billion people or more, or 8 billion right now.
Nearly eight. But have you heard of the Georgia Guidestones, Dave?
Yes, I did, and they've been destroyed by who?
Well, it's a very interesting question. But I think it's a sign of that the tide has changed. When those Georgia Guidestones have been up there for 50 years, and all of a sudden, at a certain point in time when the tide's changing, they get taken out and removed the same day.
Right.
So
didn't they have instructions for the end times?
Well, they had instructions to reduce the world's population up to 500 million. So that means about 7.5 billion people are going to be murdered or done away with. And they make no bones about that. That's their plan. And apparently the way the universe works is they have to tell us it before they do that to us. So they do it in ways like that, put up these Georgia Guidestones and say, look, we advertise, we're going to kill you all. And so that apparently gives them some sort of universal authority to do something horrible. But now that someone knows about it and has destroyed them, we're fighting back, which is great.
No. Yeah, we don't know who exactly built them. There's one man who come into town, and he said his name was Christ or Christopher, something like that. And they said he was a strange fellow, and he had the money, and he put it down, and he wanted somebody else to be in charge of putting together the construction of those guidestones.
Yeah.
So that tells you that this guy could have been a secret elite person, or he could have been an ET in human form. Who knows? Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. So when we talk about ETs, Dave, it seems to me that there's some ETs that are very, very positively disposed towards humanity, and there are those who just want to eat us and use us as slaves. So it was, as a young person, I could never believe how the way in which the negative ETs were in so much control of our planet, how we could ever get out of that enslavement. But it seems like in this lifetime, right now, this year, we're going to see that happen. And I think that's a pretty amazing thing for us to learn about. And I think that has to be broadcast so we all realize we're coming out of slavery now, and this is like a very beautiful moment in our history.
What is your opinion, or your research on Pine Gap in Australia? Are reptilians running that?
Well, the Anunnaki say they were, but the Anunnaki used to intermarry with the reptilians, so they're pretty much tied with the same brush. We had one prime minister who said he wanted to close it down, and he was sacked for the first time ever. Gough Whitlam, our prime minister, was sacked, and he was removed at the next election.
Wow. Well, that happened in England too. They had a prime minister and a lady. She just up and resigned for some reason. She was only in office 2 months, and she just abruptly resigned. So what happens when they don't really say too much? They just say they got tired of bartering with both sides, and they couldn't get anywhere.
They make it up to hide what's really going on. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Because if they're doing it, it's because there's a lot of pressure on them, and that pressure doesn't want them to reveal what's really going on, so they just keep it under the carpet.
Either threatened or whatever. Okay. We talked about Dr. Neruda. It's like they had blueprints represent a massive construction project that they're going to place on Earth. And where would that be? Do you think that?
Well, there's 7 of them, and when they got this girl Samantha to remote view the world where they had all these markers, and they found one at Chaco Canyon, New Mexico,
Yeah.
and then they found one in Brazil. No, Peru actually, Cusco, just near Brazil, in Peru. They found one in China. They found one just north of Helsinki in Finland. They found one in Antarctica, and they found one in Uluru in Australia. And another one in Africa, in Central Africa, near Mali there.
Right. I I don't want to talk about the other things that these rich elites like Gates and I have to give Elon Musk credit. I don't think he joins the rest of these billionaires in their thoughts, like Soros and Gates and some of the others, Bezos. They seem like they're anti-civilization in a way. And Elon Musk doesn't talk that way. He talks about space travel in the future and getting things going, and he's actually now standing up for a lot of constitutional rights, in which I admire him for doing that. But we don't know who. We mentioned on segment 1 about world banks and leaders and the elites that rule this planet, and that we don't have much to say about it. And everything is planned. Everything is planned, and it's brought about by these talking head politicians, like our presidents and leaders of our countries around the world. They're actually kind of told what to say, I think, in back rooms.
Yes, I believe so. Although we don't get much insight into that. But there was a time when President Eisenhower was in charge of the country, and he was asked to meet with 3 different streams of ETs in the desert at night, and they all wanted to do a deal with him. And some of them said, look, a good one said, listen, you've got nuclear weapons now, and that really affects the whole universe much more than you realize. And we'd like you to dismantle those, and we'll give you all this medicine, all this other good stuff to make it a fair trade. Well, the army generals didn't like that, so they pushed that aside. And then they spoke to other groups who were very, very negative. They said, oh, you can keep all your nuclear weapons. We just want the right to do genetic experiments on your people. We'll kidnap a few and we'll make them forget so they don't remember it, and we won't leave any marks so they can't see they've been experimented on. And in the end, President Eisenhower was spoken to by a very famous ET called Valiant Thor, who comes from Venus.
Yeah.
And Valiant Thor said, don't trust these guys, mate. They're liars and cheats. And so President Eisenhower decided he wouldn't sign with him, but behind his back there's a group called Majestic 12 who came in and signed on his behalf behind his back, and he was furious. But they signed what's called the Greada Treaty with the Greys, which gave them the right to abduct a few people. But they said within 2 or 3 years they were abducting heaps more people than they said they would. And it was very hard because they were very dominant intellectually. They had weapons way in advance of ours. So it was a very difficult situation. But apparently that's now all coming under control. That was 54. That was signed 54. So probably now we're 46, 23, 60, nearly 69 years away, and finally we've got it under control. And Valiant Thor is still here. He stayed in the White House for 3 years as a guest. And so it was President Eisenhower, and Nixon was vice president. And he became very friendly with a lot of people there. And he went to parties and he went to meet the Pope. He tried to say, listen, give up your nuclear weapons and we'll help you. But after 3 years...
Yeah, didn't he have a brother and a sister that was with him? I
saw
that.
He did. Yes, he did. And they're very handsome people, all 3 of them. And they said they came from Venus.
Right.
That's interesting because people say, I mean, we don't know the facts all the time because it's so well hidden, but there are lots of credible evidence that Nikola Tesla came from Venus also. And he was left with a family in Serbia, I think he came from. Yeah, they left him in Serbia.
Yeah, it was the European, Western European country. But yeah, Tesla was also a strange one, and it's just like Werner von Braun. And I mentioned this story. Uri Geller's told this story on my show here a couple of years ago. Werner von Braun wanted to meet Uri Geller because of his talents. He wanted to see it in person. So he calls Uri Geller, and Uri had his brother who helped him manage his show business. So they went out to New Mexico. It's Sandia. It's a base there, a secret base. a little different than it is back in those days. Back in the 70s, I think he went there while Werner von Braun was still alive. And he went in his office, and his brother was with him. And of course, he had a couple of Marine guards accompanying him all the time. And Werner von Braun, he says, I just wanted to call you here to, find out if you're for real, he says. And then, and Yuri said, he told Werner von Braun, he said, I got a question to ask you first. He said, how, in World War II, working with the Nazis as a scientist, how can you live with yourself killing that many people? And, von Braun said, well, he said, I take it like they're sending them to a better life, so that's to heaven or
convenient.
To souls. Yeah, convenient answer. But then von Braun said, well, okay, take this coin. He gives him a coin. He says, I want you to bend this coin in half. It right in front of me, and put it in your hands. I don't want to see movement anywhere. So he takes it, holds it out, and he puts it in his hand, and he bends the coin. He gives it to von Braun. Von Braun said, wow, you are magical, aren't you? And he said, well, yeah. He says, because I know he heard the CIA was talking about, they used Uri Geller in remote viewing and also in psychic energies and stuff. But then he says, I got something to show you. He takes the safe and he opens it up, and he gives a little sheet of metal to Yuri, and Yuri holds it and he says he felt it and he thought about it, and he hands it back to von Braun. He said, what do you think it is? He said that's part of a UFO craft. He said that's an alien metal, and he says, you're right. He said, we took it from a crash site, and that had to have been Roswell or whatever. But then he says, since you're so good at this, he said, I want to show you one other thing. And Yuri says, okay. So they got him a Jeep, and they had Marines escort him. And they told the brother to stay there because they didn't only wanted Yuri to see what he's going to show. He goes out to this bunker, and there's Marines standing guards at the bunker. And they got him in this room, and they had to put heavy coats on, like Alaskan coats or North Pole coats. And then Yuri says, why the big heavy coats? He said, this is out in the middle of the desert or what? He said, you'll see. So they go in, and they open the door, and then there, he said, Yuri stopped. He said, I can't say no more. And he says, just read my mind what I saw. Well, I know if you refrigerate bodies, you keep them longer, so it had to be bodies of ETs that he saw. Bingo. Yeah. So that's a fantastic story. And I got that out of him on radio, and he tells that story. But the presidents also didn't like Area 51. They didn't want secrets kept from them. And actually, they told the president it's beyond your security clearance. Isn't that something?
That's right.
So we'll talk about the elites, right?
The elites. Well, I think a part of the whole story is very important in that the Wingmakers said that they wanted humanity to spread the story of the Wingmakers because it's important that we all understand what great things are coming. And this Dr. Neruda, who spoke 42 languages, 12 of which were extinct, he became involved with them, and they started to talk with him, and they said, you're the guy. And he said, but I love my job, and the ACIO will kill me if I defect. But in the end, the Wingmakers were so powerful in their influence over him that he actually resigned from the ACIO and went out to broadcast this information on a website called wingmakers.us. And he got so many hits without any promotion, everyone wanted to know about it. So the ACIO took it down and put up a new one where they started to control it called wingmakers.com, which is different. Right. And they changed it altogether. But in the end, they met this Dr. Neruda and said, listen, you're the guy who's got to do this because we know you understand it. You empathize with it. So, he ended up doing it. And it was a great risk to himself. But I know someone called Wes Penray met with him about 2 years ago and said, look, he's fine. He's looking okay. So he's still out there doing his thing.
Right.
But the main thing was that the Wingmakers thought that this was so important that no one should control this information. We should all get this out and share it with people. So if people want to go to wingmakers.us on the internet and start to see their paintings, hear their music, read their philosophy, then they've got something to share with other people, and that's what they want. They want us all to know about this because it's important.
Okay, we brought up in part one
Mm-hmm.
earlier, and we brought up about this Noah's Ark, and I kind of said something about, and it being a DNA ship, and it's probably a spaceship and not an ark boat. But it says here, the original planners who genetically seeded Earth with higher life forms like humans, apes, dolphins, whales, dinosaurs, and so on, wanted to create a genetic library of DNA-related interdependent life forms they wanted to use as a repository or a library in the galaxy that they could draw from for their future creations. Doesn't that fit into the narrative of Noah's Ark, Will?
Yeah, sure. And there's a gentleman who spent 3 months living on Andromeda with the Andromedan people, and they said, listen, we're all interested in humans because you guys are the genetic royalty of the universe. Your genes have been, integrated with so many different races that now, he said, like your emotions are so powerful. They said, like, we're like sort of bland white cheese compared to you guys. You've got this rich range of emotions that gives you a lot of power. That we're all very envious of that.
Yeah, it's I can see where that ETs are way up there above us, and they know this. They made us, and so it's that. What's that song that it's by? It's Who Made Who? Is that by the band Who? They said Who Made Who? So
Yeah.
I think that's what they're referring to in the song. So
Yeah.
that's something else. But I mean, it's like we're talking about a big awakening this year, and we talked about in the first segment of rearranging our frequencies, and so we are controlled by frequencies, and everything's a frequency. Nothing's really solid. We're not. We could be holograms, matrices, and I have a good buddy who writes those kind of stories. But a lot of people believe in sci-fi nowadays more than any other like movie. I mean, you and I watched a lot of these special effects and these sci-fi movies, including aliens involved and stuff. Why we have such a fascination? You think that's inbred in our DNA from thousands of years ago, Will?
I think we know, intuitively that they might not educate us that way, but we can feel it and we sense it, that we're connected with all these other beings that are out there. And as much as they try and hide that from us, the harder they try, the more we think, well, they're trying to hide something, so there must be something there worthwhile researching. And so many people are interested and they're open. But some people, you raise the word ET, extraterrestrial, and they don't want to talk to you anymore. Like they're so well programmed by the system that they can't engage you on a topic because it's been programmed into that's not real, and people who talk about that are conspiracy theorists, not realizing that the whole phrase conspiracy theory was invented by the CIA in the 60s, so that if you're having an argument with someone and you just call them a conspiracy theorist, then you didn't have to debate with them anymore because that was such a negative term that they were downgraded as a source of information. So you just called someone a conspiracy theorist, and there was no need to debate with them anymore. That was the end of the argument.
Right. Now you talk about Dr. Neruda. There's a code that goes along with this frequency change from 3D to 5D. And the code is mentioned to be, it's going to be activated by two words. And can you explain these two words, sovereign, integral?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a matter of the fact that we are sovereign beings and we are integral. Like, the wingmakers say that we are immortal, infinite beings, and that we haven't been educated to understand that and believe it, but they say that's who we are, and we're here to help you realize your own power. So being sovereign and integral, being complete, it's a very important phrase. They said that to Neruda. Dr. Neruda started to repeat it. He said, every time I start repeating it, I'm feeling more powerful from just repeating those words. They're quite, the frequency of those words is quite powerful. So I do that.
What do you think about the Vatican Church? You hear all these rumors about the popes, and back in 1666, the popes were kind of, they were in charge of everything. They bossed around world leaders back then.
They did.
And you had to go kiss the ring, as they say. And even our leaders today, from Australia, from America, from Canada, from Europe, they all go there to see the Pope and they kiss the ring. So does that give the Pope the ultimate power of the world in a way?
While we're ignorant and while we believe their words, it did. But I think we've woken up. And I understand that after President Trump visited the Vatican last, Pope Francis changed a lot. And I think you can understand that he probably was changed with a new rubber face mask as a new person acting as him, because he was guilty of so many atrocities against children that were proven in the international courts that he was actually executed. And Trump organised that. So even though he's a Catholic, that's the way it goes.
You talk about Trump quite a bit, and in a way that he's spearheading this change in the world because he's standing up against the cabal and the deep state. He talks about cleaning up the swamp. Is that part of what he's talking about?
Absolutely.
Will?
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't on either team, so he was the U.S. military. They were about to have a military insurrection because they couldn't believe the way in which the whole of the US was going, and they were a total corporation that was being run by people who were shareholders, not the people who voted. So they said, we've either got to have a military insurrection, or we find someone who we can trust and believe in, and the people will be attracted to voting for him, and then we can have a president that works with us. And so they asked Trump if he'd run, and he said, okay, I will. And because no one had control of Trump, then he was a perfect, and then because he funded his own election, he didn't have to pay anyone or do anything for people who were going to support him financially. So they didn't like that. I mean, and ever since the day he got in or even decided to run, there were moves afoot to try and bring him down so he never ran again. And they never stopped. And they're still going after him because he's coming back.
Yeah, there's an ulterior motive behind all this politics, and they make it like they're fighting each other, but they're really not. I think it's a game, don't you? Don't you, Will?
Absolutely.
It's a game.
It is a game, and I've heard discussions where they say at a high level, when they're bringing people into the club, they say, "Oh, don't worry about what party it's for. We're all together," and that's quite well known that they all collaborate to get the outcomes they want, and they put in different leaders from different parties when they feel like it.
And it's like, whenever you're not watching them, they all go to lunch together. They all go out and have a drink together. Democrat and Republicans are right there shoulder to shoulder. But then when they get on the world stage, they act like they're really fighting for us, both sides. And I think it's equal corruption, let's call it. And Trump even said that. He said if he had to get rid of everybody in the House, he said there wouldn't be enough people to run the government that were corrupt. He meant those that were corrupt. So he thinks a lot of them are corrupt, and a lot of people are trying to think that Trump is corrupt. But I'm not standing on either side at this point. I think all politicians, in some sort of a way, they don't make it. They don't make it unless they go through some sort of a test or some sort of a what you call a ceremonious thing that, okay, we crown you a Republican or we crown you a Democrat, and you can run for office because we approve of you. But those people that are approved, they know ahead of time that they're going to be followers and not leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that wasn't Trump. He wasn't the natural follower, was he?
Yeah. But I without getting more involved in politics, in which that is, they rule the world, or they're puppets. They're not really ruling the world. We do. We talked about the World Bank and the world powerful families, and we talked about the elites and the cabal. They kind of rule the world, and we don't know what's going on. Let's get back into this Dr. Sala and what his programming said. We talked about Altians, in which they invented Atlanta. Atlanta. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Will?
Well, the history of Atlantis is again put in the category of conspiracy theories because they don't want us to understand what went on there. And I mean, you have the burning of all these books at Alexandria and places like that. So there's been a very definite attempt to keep everything hidden. So I speak from what I've heard, and it sounds like the Atlantans, Altians, isn't it? Altians, yes.
Altians, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of messed me up too. Altians in Atlanta.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, so yeah,
we hear that Enki, one of the Anunnaki who helped affect our DNA, he was quite powerful in Atlantis, and the Altians, as they came across, they became more in charge eventually. So I mean, we don't know much about how that dynamic actually worked because there's not a lot of history to read about it in any of the textbooks, is there? So.
right.
I mean, the important thing I thought that Dr. Sala was trying to share with us, that when he took, when Alina Denon was taken by an ET to Ganymede, the moon going around Jupiter, there she met the Wingmakers in October 2021, who said they're back here to watch humanity graduate into fifth dimensional consciousness this year. And they said they left an optical disc at Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. They left it there in 826 AD. And on that disc, they said, we're coming back in 2023 to Earth, and we're going to make sure this transition from 3D consciousness to 5D consciousness happens, and we're going to be there supervising it.
Maybe that's why we have a huge number of UFO sightings right now, and maybe why the Pentagon admitted to UFO craft, because their concern is mid-air collisions with these craft, and that tells us right there that they believe it. They said there's 200 sightings a year from the military, so they know they exist, and but they don't know how to.
But Dave, when they've got written contracts with them, like the Greada Treaty, they know very, very well, and that's why I think the ETs are quite heavily involved at the highest levels of government. They run the show, and the fact that we now hear from Alina Denon that they've been removed as of last year from the whole solar system. There's no more greys, there's no more reptilians, and so there's a bit of a power vacuum. But they've had all their minions put in very great positions of power all around the world. And now it's up to us, the real people, to realise that we've got the power to remove these people. They don't have the power to stay there like they did have.
Right.
They haven't got that protection anymore. So we can actually take over if we want to.
I hope we can, and I hope that the ETs are good ETs. There's 4 of them, I think, that's working with us.
Yeah.
Will, and they talk about that every once in a while, that they're working with our military and underground bases.
It's
and
called the
also,
Earth Alliance, Dave. It's called the Earth Alliance, and that's ETs and our militaries all around the world working together.
Right, and that's top secret. It's above top secret, I guess. Even the presidents don't really know about that. You can ask Clinton. He says I asked, I tried to find out, and they told me it's none of my business. So if they can tell the president that. There was one president, though, I think it was Eisenhower.
It was.
He got really mad, and he told him, he said, I want to know what's going on in Area 51. This was in the late 50s. Yep. And he said, I'm going to have the Colorado, I think it was the Second Army or something like that. He said, I'm gonna ship them down there around Area 51. You don't let us in and find out what's going on. We're coming in. And so they decided, okay, they'll open the gates. So he had a couple of representatives go in there and find out what was going on, and they told Eisenhower. And of course, at the same time, he had these ET visitations at that Air Force base in California. So, like you alluded to in part 1 of our series here. So, yeah, it's very interesting, and you get into all this stuff, and then here we talk about the feeders and the cedars, whatever, the cedars. It's not feeders, it's cedars.
It's cedars.
They said, cedars, and they took a chimp DNA, implanted it with a human genome. Is that true? Is that part of what they did?
Well, the cedars is another name for the Wingmakers. They are the same beings. So how they made their DNA, I haven't documented that anywhere, but they have they had a major influence. They said to us, look, we made you guys, and we put our DNA into you. And they said that in part of that document that I shared with you, but they talk about that.
Right.
And they're very proud of, they have a great investment in us because they've put their DNA into us. And then there's a quantum physicist called Al Bielek. He was a captain in the US military.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was used in Project Montauk, where they pushed him into the future. And now the Wingmakers are supposed to exist 750 years into our future, because they can time travel backwards and forwards. And when he went into the future 750 years, he said, I met these guys who call themselves the Wingmakers. And their story was this. They said, we want everyone to be very, very happy. So we gave them everything. It was a real socialist society. But we asked them to give back 3 hours of their own work and labour each week, not each day, each week, 3 hours. And we couldn't believe it. They wouldn't do it. And we realised, oh, shit, we've made a big mistake. So they travelled all the way back to now, our time, and they're trying to fix that because it's ridiculous that we wouldn't do 3 hours work a week to get everything we wanted, everything.
So you're saying we do have time travel and we don't know about it?
Well, a lot of people do know about it, but not the common public, no.
Right.
It's not in our universities just yet. And Dr. Neruda, his boss 15, was drawn to study time travel very, very early in life, and everyone thought he was crazy. But now that's their major focus.
Well, these cedars, what you're talking about, you know, the wing makers. What happens is throughout history, I read part of this, and I that they were seeding us all along, evolving. We were evolving into what they want us to turn out to be, and they did it slowly, so we could capture the environment and capture our behavior and move with it slowly, because they didn't want to just say, okay, you're a human, boom, you're there. But no. So the word evolution, I mean, does that come in play, Will?
No. They say that they install all the DNA on this planet was brought here. Every plant life, every animal, every human, like the whales, the dolphins, they were all brought to this planet for a reason. But I think that was their way of playing with creation, if you like.
Right.
But in the end, they want us to be whole beings. They're saying in this document that we're going to become like them in the end. So we're going to be totally powerful, and we're going to be able to sort of pursue our own agendas. And they said the important part of great evolution is that when you match the individual's needs with the whole's needs, everyone's needs. So you bring them together, and that's what real enlightenment is about.
Yeah, and speaking of this evolutionary type idea brought up that the Cedars are trying to do, they talk about early humans. They call them the blackheads, early humans. And who were they? What were they calling blackheads? Were they dark-haired people or what, Will?
Well, I mean, because we were in Africa, it could have been just Africans, but the evidence in the Sumerian clay tablet says that the Anunnaki started with Homo erectus, which was quite primitive, even more primitive than what's that term of ancient starts with N?
What are you talking about? A Neanderthal?
Neanderthal, yeah. They said that the original Homo erectus was even more primitive than that, but they tweaked their DNA up and made us able to speak and take orders and mine the gold. So that was their plan.
Right. So I think, us being, it wasn't all about the white people to begin with. You had black people and they had different races. And so we're all equal as far as they even saw when they were doing their DNA experiments with us. And we were all treated equally, and we all come through their DNA processing. Even though we're different races, we were treated equally back then. But now, in the last couple of 100 years, 300 years, of course, certain groups of people, which we alluded to in episode 1, that racism plays a lot into what goes on in warfare now. Countries that go to war with each other, it's basically over, I guess, their own race, and they fight to try to improve their own race or increase their own race. Is that how you see it, Will, about war?
I see that there are elites who just like to make money out of war, and they create a story for the war, and they sell it to us through the mainstream media, and we accept it. I don't think there's any real reason to have wars. They just make those reasons up, so we fight each other, we reduce the population a bit, and we make a lot of money for them. Under Nasara Gassara, they're going to eliminate all wars and all the militaries in the world. There's 209 militaries around the world that have signed this document now in Geneva on Thanksgiving Day. last year, November the 25th, and all 209 countries signed Nasara Gassara into law, and that Nasara Gassara is going to eliminate war globally. They don't want that to be what runs the world anymore. It's not necessary.
Right. I'm reading some notes here on it says no savior, not to save or help people, but only when the return of Jesus comes will that happen. So in the beginning, we spoke of Mahdi, who comes first and he cleanses humans and eradicates the demons. But that's not going to be our savior until Jesus Christ arrives. I think that's what they're saying. And
I think the wingmakers have made it so that we've got all of spirituality within us, and it's been suppressed for whatever reason. But they want us in this year to realize our full divinity, and that's why let's talk about the sovereign integral. We are everything we need to be, and we don't need any saviors. So they're saying that religion is going to disappear because we're all going to become spiritual beings that are sovereign integrals that don't have a need for a savior. So that's
right. Yeah, and a lot of the people that are practicing meditation and spiritualism, they're on kind of a right track, I guess, going from 3-dimension to the 5th dimension. I know some people, and I've had them on my show that talk about spiritualism. They seem to be on the right track of what the ETs or what the wingmakers want us to be. They want us to have more spirituality. They want us to have more love, peace, and consciousness, and be aware of our fellow human being, and that we don't have enough of. And they say the end will come when the morals of the world go downhill. And right now, the morals of the world, lies, false news, killings, shootings, robberies, are going out of the roof. So that's an indication. They said the end is coming soon. And I've heard people talk about the end is coming soon. Is that what we're talking about this year in 23?
We're talking about the end of evil and pain and suffering. And that means when we all become self-empowered and we learn, and to get to that point, we have to learn. We're not taught this very, very often, but once we learn how to love ourselves, we know then how to radiate that love to others, and the world becomes a much better energy frequency to survive it. At the moment, it's all about too much service to self and not enough service to others.
Right. I think we have opponents that are fighting this idea. We have governments, deep state, the cabal, and these people that are ruling the world. And we mentioned the Vatican. We're mentioning our values, our morals are falling off a cliff. We're having human trafficking, drug trafficking, people dying of drugs. So, and we got the increased UFO observations. So Will, is this all speeding up to this 5th dimension? Is this what it's rapidly changing?
I feel absolutely. And I think this year, even though we're almost in February tomorrow, it's coming about very quickly.
Wow.
We're expecting Nasara Gassara to come into effect this month of February. So
what's going to be the first sign of it, do you think? Or
the first sign of it. Wow.
Will it be the money markets changing?
Yes, that's happening this week. It's happening this week. Okay. A lot of people don't realize that part of Nasara Gassara is to equalize all the currencies. And every member of the US Congress has gone and bought very, very cheap currencies that are going to turn into a lot of money, like in the next few days. So if you went out today and you bought $100 US of, say, Vietnamese dong, that'd give you about 1.7 million for $100. Over the next few weeks, that's going to convert into 1.7 million US. And not many people understand that, but that's what's coming to our planet. So everyone's going to have access to money. And every member of Congress in your US has these foreign currencies that are going to be increased in value tremendously.
Will, why did they choose Vietnam for starting this money transaction?
Well, it starts actually, it's not, we speak more about Iraq, but all those countries where the US invaded and demolished their economies, like Vietnam and like Iraq, their currencies have suffered a lot, and they're the ones whose currencies are going to be raised again to be level with every other currency on the planet. So I mean, some people are buying bolivaros, I think it's called that. There's Zimbabwe currency, ZIMs they're called. There's all sorts of currencies out there, and people are out there investing in these currencies because when they're all meet 1 to 1, people are going to make a lot of money, a lot of money. And when you check out the Sara, you'll hear that's what's going to happen.
What about these wing makers? What do they make of countries like China, North Korea, Russia, Iran being communist or terrorist states? Are they going to pay a price for all this, Will?
Well, I think the politicians are going to have a big reduction in power, and the people are going to get much more. We're going to have real democracies where people are going to vote in who they want. The size of the government's going to be reduced by 90%, and the people are going to be voting for it. Where at the moment, all the voting is being organised by the elites to give them the results they want. But now we're going to have a blockchain form of voting that they're going to organise. They're organising for us right now, and those elections will be held within 120 days of Nasara being announced publicly. And then we all vote with a blockchain for who we want, and the government's going to be run by we the people for a change. So that's going to make a very, very big difference, because at the moment it's run by the hoodlums and the people who just want to take advantage of us and run us all as slaves. So that's going to change, and we're going to be empowered to run ourselves. So that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I have a good buddy who tells me that the cabal and the elites are on their way down right now. They're falling. They're
Absolutely.
failing. Yeah. So do you see that too? You see the world changing in that way?
Hugely. I mean, the massive amount of arrests taking place right now, but no one's advertising, so we're not reading about it anywhere. But we're going to hear about that like in February. We're going to realise just how many thousands of people have been arrested who've been very, very negative towards our enjoyment of life and our enslavement. And those people are going out, and we're going to have to discover how to be ourselves without any enslavement. We're just going to find our own truth. And that's going to be very empowering for all of us.
Okay, what about the wing makers, the seeders? What involvement are they going to have in this big change?
Well, I think they want us to discover our own spirituality, our own divinity, and that we are immortal, infinite beings. And they don't really want to control that. They want us to discover that ourselves. I mean, the old way was we have religions telling us how to be and how to exist, but the wing makers' way is for us to look, we're all divine beings, we're all equal, you're as powerful as us. We want you to find your own truth and to share it with us. So that's going to be very different.
What kind of plans, let's talk about exopolitics. What kind of plans are being talked about with these 4 ET races, and are exopoliticians, as you would call them, are leaders of our scientific field, military field, and political fields, that they're meeting and talking? What do they talk about? What do they discuss? Well, I mean,
well, they don't actually let me in on that. They don't tell me a lot about what they're talking about. But I mean, a good example of this is, I mean, you probably heard of Admiral Richard Byrd.
Yes.
Well, he flew over our North Pole in 1947.
Right.
And to his amazement, he was taken down into a hole in the earth by some 2 ETs, I guess, UFOs. And there he met the leader of their group who lived in the inner earth. And he found this guy very, very charming, very, very warm, and he felt a lot of respect for him. And this guy said, look, this is 1947. You guys have discovered nuclear weapons. We really want you to stop your nuclear testing, and we will help you. We will help you in every way we can help you. And he said, we've chosen you because we know that you have a lot of respect with your government, and this is a mission we're giving to you specifically because we know that you can articulate this. So he went back and told this to everyone concerned, and they said to him, do not ever mention a word of this ever again in your life. But during his life, he wrote a very detailed diary of what happened, and on his death, his son published it. So you can look up the diary of Admiral Richard Byrd and see that he met these beings that live on the inner earth, and they're much taller than us. They're about 7 to 8 feet, and they're very handsome beings, and they love humanity. So there's many things that are going to happen that have been kept under the covers for too long, Dave.
Yeah, I know they kept Admiral Byrd under top secret, and he couldn't talk about a lot of things that he did or witnessed, and
No.
even some of his people. But yeah, and same thing with Antarctica. There's special bases down there, high security clearance bases there that actually they got ETs underground there, and they got our scientists and our military down there too. And it's I had a guy on my show here a while back that literally warned us what could happen from Antarctica and what they're doing there. So that's another thing we've got to worry about. I don't think the ETs want us to have a nuclear war and destroy the planet, because they want to, if anything, if they lose us as human beings, they're going to want to reseed the planet with their own life forms, right? They will.
Yes, they're very much. I understand that all the military missiles, particularly Russia, China, and America, have all been neutralized. So, like there's videos of there was a nuclear missile fired from somewhere near North Korea. They were making out it was from North Korea, but it wasn't. It was a bogus CIA submarine that fired it. Anyway, as it approached Hawaii, everyone was told to go and hide because of the nuclear missile coming in. And then there's a video of a UFO approaching this missile, went around it twice, fired light into it in 3 different angles, and then it just went into the ocean. So they're here to protect us, and they're taking a very active role in that.
They've actually, like you said, on missile shots that they've had, there's been actually UFOs around these shots. And like you said, there was a couple destroyed, and they have films of that. I find it very intriguing. But a lot of people say, well, watch what you wish for. Don't communicate out there in the universe that we're here. Don't let the aliens know that we're here. They already know we're here. You got at least 56, 57 species that know we're here. And of course, there are, like you said earlier, there are some mean ones, and there are some good ones who want to work with us, and they want to keep our human race going and probably take it into like fifth dimension, into a peaceful, whole new lifestyle, and which would be great for all of us. A lot of people say we're living hell on earth. You ever heard these old timers say hell on earth, and they say that's what we're living here now. Yeah, we have ups and downs, and emotional ups and downs. We have death, in which we don't look at like a lot of ancient cultures do. A lot of ancient cultures look at death as a beginning, but here in modern society, Australia, America, Canada, Europe, we look at death as scary. It is scary, I guess, to take that leap.
Maybe we're intended to believe that for a reason, Dave, to make us afraid of death and to fight for our existence.
And also, we're scared into thinking that we could go to hell for the things we do. And I don't think we have, my own personal opinion, this is not research, but I've heard that there's not really a hell, but more of a heaven, that we go to another dimension when we pass on. And there's actually reincarnation. We have choice. We actually chose to live our life that we're living now. Maybe if we lived a rough life like some of us have, maybe that gets us more points. And when we go to heaven or go to another dimension, then we get more points and we get a better choice of what we want to do in our next life.
Yeah, I don't know about this point scoring system. That seems a bit part of the old matrix thinking.
I'm wishful thinking that God will give us points,
Yeah, I think that we all know what we have to do, what we can do, and what our options are. And some of us make better choices than others. And I mean, we learn from what we sow is what we reap. And so there's a learning process we have the opportunity to go through. I'm just amazed how much the universe has been teaching me stuff all my life, and I didn't like it at the time. I was thinking that was terrible. But, it was the universe just trying to show me how to learn about life in a way that was a bit painful, but, it's a very, experience is like the best teacher.
Yeah.
And
No, it is. It is. We live a life, and we have to live pain and sorrow and suffering. But okay, getting back to these capsules, these time capsules they found in New Mexico. They found the first one. Nobody told us about that. Are they going to tell us when they find the other 6? or is it going to be a big surprise to us?
Well, in that story that I showed you with the wingmakers, they tell Samantha, sorry, when she's remote viewing them, that there is another architect who was one of the wingmakers who helped build these 7 time capsules, and she is a wingmaker, and she's going to come back, and she's here on Earth now, and Samantha apparently met her in one of her remote viewing sessions, and she's got a mother called Sarah, and Sarah will have this child called Leah, and Leah's was about, well, she'd be about 40 or 50 now, and Leah, who's one of the wingmakers, once all this information about the wingmakers comes out, she will recognise that's her, that knows all this information. She'll come forward and show whoever she chooses to show where all the other 6 time capsules are, and help activate them all so they all start to release this frequency, which affects our DNA and lifts us up to 5th dimensional consciousness.
So Leah is probably here now, and we just don't know it. Yes. And she knows her job, what she's got to do. She already knows that.
She's waiting to hear from us about this, the Wingmaker story. That's why we need to get it out. That's why I'm on the show. I want people to understand Wingmaker's site, wingmaker.us, has to be spread around because it's not advertised very well. And the Wingmaker say when this happens, she'll know that it's her, and she'll come forward.
So when we all get activated, she'll be activated to do her duty. And some of us will probably have assignments too. Is that right, Will, when we get activated?
Leah's a bit different because she's one of them, and she's sent here for a mission. So her mission is to locate these sites and activate them all. And then that's the mission that takes us into 5th dimensional consciousness. So goodness knows what other objectives there are for us. That's going beyond what I understand, really. But I think that we all, being part of divinity, will have a mission of our own, because the individual and the whole are both important, and we've got to learn how to integrate those two, I think.
All right. What about us old timers? Will we be young again?
Well, the med beds can only reduce our age by 30 years. So
okay.
You know, that's still pretty healthy, because I mean, being an organic farmer, I want 30 years off my age to go back and get into organic farming and do it, seriously.
Yeah, I got more of a bucket list to finish. I want to finish my books. I want to do these shows and get enlightenment out to people like you're giving us here on this show. And Will, I really appreciate it. And we're running low on time. I guess you want to repeat what you said in the first segment about how they can find out more about this. You just said it, I think, the website.
Yes, and also remember too, Dave, that when we get the medbed treatment, not only will we be taken back to 30 years younger, we will be able to live to at least 300 plus, and those years will be very healthy years because they're going to reinvigorate all of our DNA. So the next 300 years that we're going to live are going to be pretty full on and enjoyable because we're going to be healthy and robust.
Wow, it kind of changes the biblical end of things or end of times. A little bit, doesn't it? Yeah. So I hope it's this way that we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening in. We had segment 1, in which I'll release first, and then this segment here, segment 2, I'll release a little bit later, a couple days later, not to crowd the airwaves on Facebook and on Rumble and YouTube and places like that. So, Will Hamilton from Australia, thank you so much for being a great and honorable guest on this show. And you've been listening to the Dave Emmons Show, and we appreciate you tuning in and listening, and we love all of you. Okay?
Thanks, Dave. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you, Will. Nice talking to you, mate.
Spread the word.
Much. Yeah, okay. We will. We're going to do it with this show as a beginner. Okay.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.